All right, everyone. Welcome again for our second talk in the sponsoring room. Thank you very much for being here. I have the honor to introduce Sandro Bachmann from InfoGuard. He's Senior Incident Responder there, and he will tell us about artificial intelligence and cybersecurity, the big topic of this conference, and how AI helps the attackers, but it can also help us, so very broad. And feel free to ask the questions in the end of the talk.
Thank you very much. Hello, I'm Sandro. I've done a bachelor in computer science. Back then, it was not possible to do something in security, so I'm pretty happy with it. Therefore, I've made some certificates, and I work for InfoGuard now since 2017. I started in a SOC position, means I was onboarding new customers, I was looking into alerts from our customers, and then in 2020, I've made a small journey into our red team to see how the offensive side works. And now since 2020, so almost 4 years ago, I'm mostly focusing on incident response. So I get the calls from customers who are breached or whatever. So at InfoGuard, we have an MDR service that we are offering to our customers. Last year, we had some numbers from back then. So we had around 22,000 detections from our customers' sensors. And out of these 22,000 alerts, 875 need further attention. That means most likely a true positive or something where the artificial intelligence may has blocked the attack, but it needed to be verified further by a second tier analyst to ensure that nothing happens and the correct measures are in place. And then just 53 cases that were coming through that chain in the end landed in the CSIRT in our team. And so we have that process that from different sensors that our customers has installed are generating alerts. Then they are initially triaged by our SOC Tier 1 analysts, and if it's not clear if it's something or not, then it will be handed over to the Tier 2 analysts. And if the SOC analysts cannot do anything, so they have not the possibility to implement the right measures, then it's handed over to the incident response team. So incident response, or the CSIRT, is part of our MDR service. So how does such a case look like when it started in the Tier 1 SOC, and in the end, it will end up in the CSIRT? So here I have a case from last year. It's a bit special. We have two different environments. On the left side, you see the customer's customer environment, so there was no EDR in place or something like that. And on the right side, there's the actual customer's environment, so he's a service provider and offering some server housing. And as you see, the problem there is that the domain controllers are shared over the different environments. And therefore, on the left side, we have no visibility what's going on there. And last year, on a day, it happened in the afternoon, in the evening, that an attacker entered the not protected environment. He logged in, MFA was not in place, and then he started to implement the command and control beaconing around 1 hour later. And during that time, he has done just some local reconnaissance activities. For example, he was looking for, or he was using NetScan to check out how big is my actual environment that I currently stepped in, and also some other DESLab things, PC Hunter, to check locally what's possible and what's not possible. So that was the actual day one of the recon, and around 2 hours later, the attacker logged off. So he was done for that day, and we had at this time no possibility to see something because he has not touched our environment in that moment. Then on day 9, so between day 1 and day 9, there was no actions from the attacker. But then he started. He accessed the server again via his command and control channel, or started with the first more actions that he sent via the command and control channel. And then he started to recon the service provider. So he had made some net scan activities, but then he started a DC sync, which failed and was blocked by the EDR platform. Then he tried to drop a vulnerable driver on the domain controllers. He was also not successful with that. That was automatically blocked. And then he tried to start some remote services. I think it was Cobalt Strike that he tried to run as a service on the remote system. And also that was blocked. So then we had the alerts in our SOC, and one of our analysts was looking into the alerts. And of course, if you see something like this, and most of them is blocked, so the attacker really tried during these 3 hours or 4 hours, however, to laterally move to the domain controllers and attack them, and he was not successful. And as we have no possibility to isolate the compromised network, therefore, our SOC decided to hand over that case to the CSIRT, where we get in touch with the customer, and he get in touch with his customer, because we cannot simply isolate servers that belong to a customer, because that has a business impact. And to that situation, there was no business impact, so nothing was encrypted or something. But of course, something can happen in the future. So these are cases that actually were handed over from SOC 1 to our CSIRT. So as we have seen with the tools in place, machine learning and deep learning have massively improved the cybersecurity products. Because when there would not have been something like an EDR, the attacker would have been successful, with the first traces he has done, I think. Then a bit more about some numbers. So we are not just having an MDR service, so we also have a CSIRT that can be used by new customers. So last year we had around 260 cases where we have done something. And most of them is compromised servers, workstations, or users. So that makes the most of our cases. And why? Because in the past, we often had calls, we are completely ransomware. What can we do now? Now the tools are able to block these threats, and then a customer get in touch with us. Hey, we have a very strange alert. We don't know what to do, where this is coming from. Can you please help us? And then we have often just a compromised server or a workstation or a user, and with some, not that high effort as it is in ransomware, the situation is relatively fast under control. Also interesting from our ransomware cases, based on the information we have from the customers, 15% of them have paid the ransomware, and in 58% of the time, the customer has decided not to pay the ransomware actors. So the threat actors are slowed down by AI-driven EPP and EDR tools, but it's still required that we manually intervene with the environment of the customer, that we get the situation under control. We cannot think about that an EDR is doing everything on their own, and we are in a good situation when we just leave everything up to the automation. Then the next topic, it's phishing, because that happens quite often, or most of the cases we have are phishing or business email compromises. On the left side, you see the different entry points that we see in our cases. So A1 is vulnerability, that an attacker is exploiting remote code execution vulnerability somewhere on the parameter. And that's how he jumps into an environment. But sometimes there are unsecure services exposed, things where MFA is not in place, where an attacker can easily log in. Maybe he already knows the passwords. Quite a funny story from that year. I had an incident where an attacker was entering a company with the credentials of a user. And during the investigation, we found out that this user also has a private email address. And if you simply search for the email address of the user that was used during the attack, you directly get the hit with the password. And that password was leaked, I think, in 2018. So it was 6 years ago. And in that company, there was no change your password policy or something. So pretty easy how attackers can access such systems when there's no MFA in place. And and the third and the fourth vector we see quite often is phishing, sometimes with malware distribution. That means sometimes they're just looking for the credentials that they can enter. For example, the Azure tenant, M365, and do some shady things in the user's mailbox they have compromised. Or in other cases, they send some malware that can be downloaded from a server or from a SharePoint. That is also a breach one from a different user that they have compromised. And then they are downloading or let the phished user download the malware, execute it, and then they have maybe popped the shell or something. And then the fifth one, that's the supply chain. So when the attacker is coming through the supply chain into your environment. And as we see, the entry points have evolved in the last years. 2021, we had 22% of business or phishing cases. Then a year later, 27%, and now we're on 64% with the numbers. But we also need to say that the numbers with vulnerability were going or decreased a bit, because in 2021 we had the famous Hafnium case, and even in 2022 we had some of these cases. So and also this year we still see compromised servers. So in some ransomware cases, we just get the attention on the Exchange server when there's one in the customer side, and quite often we find some web shells on those servers. Often they are already decommissioned or not available from the internet anymore because they switched to M365, but we see there was a compromise in the past. And these are the entry points, and especially phishing, and I would say that's maybe one of the reasons or why it is successful, because when you use ChatGPT to write a letter, when you have the context from the mails you maybe have get from the compromised users, and you have that context, you can write better phishing mails without typos in it, and therefore it's quite easier for attackers to write write a good phishing mail. And what can we expect in the past? I think we had for 2 or 3 months ago, we had the first deepfake call case that a customer was getting in touch with us what they need to do, because one of their finance employees was called by their boss that they should transfer some money, but they were not successful, or the threat actor was not successful. But we see that more and more. We're also trying it on our own, so it's pretty easy with a notebook with 2,000 or 3,000 Swiss francs. You can easily do something like a deepfake call with the appropriate frame ratio, so that it's not that easy to discover that it's a fake call. So that's why the attackers will be more and more successful, and that's really a bad thing with the phishing cases we have, because it scales pretty easy. So the threat actor is sending an email to, I would say, 1,000 users, and maybe one user is, with one user, the attacker is successful, that he's able to access that user's mailbox. And often we see that the attackers are trying to upload something to SharePoint and spread that to other customers, often with the sharing feature. So you get an email from Microsoft, so it seems legit. But other actors are more interested in the money flow. So they implement inbox rules that they are interested in. If they just use the mailbox to phish more users, they implement an inbox rule that the mails that are coming back are not visible for the user, so that they directly land in the RSS folder or in the recycle bin. But others generate some keywords. For example, if it's a bill or something, then they will redirect the email maybe to some to a mailbox that's under control of the attacker. And when he sees that, he may still have access to the mailbox and can manipulate the email, so send it again with a different IBAN, and sometimes that is successful. And if an attacker is doing that and he tries to compromise as many users as possible, so as soon as he has compromised another user, then he can get all the address book entries out of it, and simply run another phishing campaign. And if he's doing that often enough, he has enough accounts to do some shady things. In the meantime, often customers get alerted when they find out that their customers have received some strange phishing mails. And then they get in touch with us, and then we are looking into their environment to look for further compromised users. And it's often that it's not just one user that is actively used by a threat actor, or just one is actively used, but often we see more than 5 or 10 compromised mailboxes, but we just see that they were compromised but not really used. So the attackers are having some backup mailboxes that they can use for their attacks. And so that goes on, and in the end, the attacker will have a lot of different email addresses that he can control and use for further phishing attempts or to manipulate the money flow. So thanks to generative AI, we can expect even more successful attacks like this. Then ransomware. Of course, that's also something where threat actors are using AI. Last week, I had a purple team exercise together with our red teamers, and I've also seen that they are using OpenAI quite often. Just how do you do that in another way, and things like that. So it's quite obvious that attackers are using this type of tools. But where does that lead to? So we had one case where the attacker encrypted the server, not the whole environment, in just 8 seconds. So within 8 seconds, the attacker initially infiltrated the server, and 8 seconds later, he encrypted the server. So that's pretty fast. And we cannot do much against that. So there's a research paper from Feng, Bindu, Gupta, and Kang which describes that an LLM agent is able to autonomously exploit one-day vulnerabilities. With GPT-4, that's possible, and if you just give the CV description to the LLM, then in 87% of the times, LLM will be successful in exploiting such a vulnerability. We had here one case. The CV was published on the 31st of October last year. And then 5 days later, we have seen that, our server or our customer was compromised. In the attack timeline, we see at, I don't know if you can see it, but the seconds are just important in that case. We have here a timestamp with 64 seconds in the end, where the attacker dropped the web shell on the endpoint or on the server. And with in 45 seconds, the attacker started the ransomware. So within 8 seconds, the attacker entered the server and started the ransomware. Of course, there was not much to do against that, because on that endpoint there was no EDR that would be able to block such a threat. And special here, the attacker were just asking for $2,000 in Bitcoin. So that's also a pretty low amount that we do not see that often, and that leads us to the assumption that this is just mass business. So one person has created that or found that vulnerable server and then let the LLM do that, and maybe he gets some money later on. So the tools are good when they're in place, but completely neutralize an attack is not always possible. So the threat actors are evolving. They see themselves as businessmen, and with OpenAI or general with AI, it's easier, we are faster, or they are faster, it brings them more revenue, therefore they are using it. They're using triple extortion or even more ways to threaten the customer. I mean, when we're at the time where a threat actor is filing complaints against their victims, then we are definitely on the right track when they need to do things like that, because we have the backup under control, we'll keep our most important data in a safe place that they cannot be exfiltrated, and then threat actors need to be creative in new threats to get some money. Then the threat actors are, of course, using AI for communication and also for the exploitation. Cryptocurrencies still hard to trace, but law enforcement had some really good success stories against Lockbit, against Hive. So also our threat actors cannot, they need to be aware of OPSEC and all of that. And I think when they are interacting with LLM models, when they are just typing something that they are not aware of what it's doing, then I think it's more something that will help law enforcement to find them. That's my assumption. So what can we do against these threats? It's an NIST framework. Yesterday or in the past, we focus more on protection and identify, and now it goes more into the direction of you need to be able to respond to threats in a fast way, and you also need to be able to recover from such a scenario. So with our MDR service, we also have a big part of is the response, so that the customer is prepared. He knows what he needs to do in a case where a threat actor is in their network, and there's also it's also important that we also focus on the prevention of such alerts or such attacks. for example, harden our system, patch the things. So that's important that the threat actors are not successful. So yeah, our challenge, the data exfil is more important than the encryption because most customers have their backup or the backup is working, but they are more afraid of the data that will be released maybe later. Insurance companies have more stricter policies. They are not covering everything. So that is also a problem that some customers might have when they do not do their obligations they need to do for their policies. We have a problem with mixed environments. So sometimes it's hybrid, it's cloud only. And what happens if your cloud is compromised? Do you have a cloud exit strategy? So we had a case that was last year where a customer completely lost his ERP system because it was in a cloud environment, and that cloud environment was completely ransomed. That customer was not the biggest customer of that service provider, and therefore he was waiting nearly 10 days until he get the response. What's happened or what happened to his data? Is he able to get his data back and all that stuff? So also think about the cloud exit strategy when your cloud provider is compromised. Then users are mix up everything. So home use, business use, bring your own device, whatever. So Chrome installed on the business notebook and at home, and then the passwords are synchronized. And in the end, someone is breaching your private computer, which is not protected with the nice tools that we have these days. And then the passwords are stolen from your private notebook, which has a bad, not the best protection maybe. And so the attacker is able to steal company passwords from non-company devices. And we also have restrictions. That's a problem that we have, that we cannot investigate private devices. So if someone has a bring your own device, we need to talk with these people, make them understand why we need to investigate these devices. And sometimes it's a cloud environment where we absolutely have no possibility to install something, to analyze that. Then we rely on the cloud provider that he has everything under control. And with that, I want to come to the last slides. The key takeaways. So the threat actors will be faster in responding to new vulnerabilities. That means we have less time for patching. So we need to ensure that our patching processes works fine. Then threat actors will be faster during the attack, from initial to actions on objectives. So they have easier tools, they can automate stuff, they find different ways in an easier way that they have found it before. So they will be faster, and we also need to use something with a little bit more artificial intelligence in it to counter them. AI allows threat actors to attack new objectives, so they don't need to know what they are attacking because they can ask a LLM, hey, what is that and how can I enter that? So they will most probably also, phishing in fields where they are not used to in the past. Then EPP, EDRs with AI will slow down the attacker and gives us more time to respond to it. But in the end, we need to invest more in the prevention so that nothing will happen, that our systems are hardened, that the attacker needs more time to attack us and to do something, to create damage. And the other part, we need to be able to respond in a fast way. And yeah, that was it from my side. If you need some help, we are available for you. And maybe we have time for a question or not.
Thank you very much. Great talk, Sandro. Thank you. Do you hear me? Okay. So we are open to questions. please, if you have any questions to Sandro. If not, we have one. Perfectly. Just speak up and I will repeat so everyone will hear you.
In the first part, you mentioned machine learning. Can you just say more details about how exactly machine learning is used, on what base of data, and so on?
So for me, it's more a black box.
Sorry, but the question is about machine learning, so everyone can hear. Sorry.
Exactly.
No.
Yeah. Well, for me, I'm not really an expert in artificial intelligence, machine learning, and all that stuff. So what I rely here is more on the products that we are using, like an EPP, an EDR solution that is, creating some decisions based on very small data set that is available that gives him the decision to block a threat or not. But I'm not very a specialist, and it's also for us as users of a product, more or less a black box, how they use it and which data they really use to create some decisions.
So I fear our time is over. We already have the people coming here. If you have further questions to Sandro, please ask him when you see him in the conference or at the InfoGuard stand. And thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.